What's up, everybody? There's no sugarcoating it, no way around it. You picked a fantastic week to show up because this is our sex talk. Look, you are mature enough to handle this conversation because here's what I know about you and me and everyone. This isn't the first time you've heard the word sex. In fact, I guess this isn't even the first conversation you've had about sex. I also know that sex is a thing we tend to whisper about or talk about behind closed doors or in the dark or in DMs or with just our closest group of friends, but it's rarely a thing we talk about with the lights on and out in the open. And yet, because sex is a good and powerful thing, it deserves some undistracted, non-secretive attention. And lastly, the other thing I know about you and me and everyone else is that before we jump in, when it comes to things that are good and powerful, things like money and yes, sex and your health and the future and all kinds of good and powerful things, isn't it true that you want to approach them with a plan instead of waking up one day unsure of how you got there? So that's what we're doing here in this conversation, all right? So last time we talked about how sex is good and powerful, so choosing to have sexual integrity actually matters. This week, hold on to your phones. We're talking all about how, when it comes to sex, technology is good and powerful. Let's take a closer look. When it comes to sex and technology, there are so many different things that we could focus on in this talk, from sexual relationships over technology to sending or receiving sexual images. But for this talk, we are going to focus on one of the most sexualized aspects of technology, pornography. Okay, first, we have to acknowledge something important about technology itself, right? It's this idea that technology is good, right? It's because of technology that we can power our homes with the sun. It's because of technology that cars can drive themselves. I mean, our phones literally give us access to the world whenever we want it. We also have to acknowledge at the same time that technology can also be really difficult to manage. Don't believe me? Think about this. I mean, see if this is true for you. I know some of these are true for me. Have you ever purposely or even accidentally used technology to procrastinate doing something that you needed to do? I mean, like you got totally wrapped up in something and before you knew it, way too much time had passed and you were still scrolling? Or would you say that your screen time each week is probably just a little more than you wish it was? Or have you ever thought, let me try to go for an extended amount of time without my phone like people used to do back in the 1900s, and you only lasted like less than an hour? Or, I mean, really think about this. Have you ever been overly confident in your ability to practice self-control online? For example, you said you wouldn't check your ex's page, but you did. Or you said that you wouldn't do any online shopping, but you did. Or you said you wouldn't look at porn or sexual content, but you did. Maybe you even got caught up in sending or receiving nudes, or maybe porn has become a habit. When it comes to technology, it can get complicated quickly. There is so much potential for good and so much potential for bad. And sometimes, some of us, not all of us, sometimes we think we can handle more than we actually can. And that brings us to the next part of our sex talk. Let's take a look at the Bible. Now, the authors who wrote the Bible didn't know about the technology we have today, but they did have something to say about the topics we're covering or the challenges those things create. In fact, one of the best things about the Bible is that its authors remind us that people who lived thousands of years ago aren't all that different from people living today. We face the same kinds of issues and challenges that they did. So we read the Bible for inspiration, but we also read it to feel less alone. We read the Bible because we aren't the first people to experience the challenges that we face, and looking back at how they handled it can help us see how to handle it moving forward. So there's a guy we tend to talk about a lot in church. His name is Paul. He was one of the central figures in getting this whole church thing that you and I are a part of today. He was one of the people who helped get it all started. And we talk about him a lot because he was actually responsible for writing a significant portion of part of the Bible. A lot of the letters he wrote are now books of the Bible. And one of those letters was to a church in a town called Corinth. Now, Corinth was a thriving city. It was a hub for a lot of businesses. It was a wealthy town that was visited by a lot of people, and in some ways, it was a party town. Think like New York or Los Angeles. It was also a very sexualized culture, kind of like our culture is today. And in the midst of all of that, a party town with a sexual culture, this is what the Apostle Paul says: flee from sexual immorality. Now, you know that flee basically means to run away, like really run away. Paul says to run away from sexual immorality, which makes us have to ask this question. What is sexual immorality? Like, how do I know when to run? Well, sexual immorality is acting in a way that doesn't line up with what God says is best when it comes to sex. There's some kind of inconsistency with what God says and then maybe how we behave. On the other hand, integrity is when your actions match your beliefs. That's why you'll hear us use this phrase, sexual integrity. Sexual integrity means respecting yourself and others when it comes to intimacy. It means you believe in respecting yourself and others, and you do your part to make sure that your beliefs line up with your actions. It may look like setting boundaries or making intentional choices to guard against situations that you don't want to be in. And this idea can change the way we think about porn. Sexual content is all around us. I mean, literally, think about it. Snapchat, sexting, movies, music, advertisements, conversations, apps. It is everywhere. I mean, porn alone is a $12 billion a year industry. Of course, it's all around us all the time. And here's what you and I know. It's impossible to spend time around something and not be affected by it. This is a topic that's relevant to all of us. Paul continues. All other sins a person commits are outside the body, but whoever sins sexually sins against their own body. Do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own. You were bought with a price. Therefore, honor God with your bodies. Now, in this passage, Paul talks a lot about the potential negative impact of sexual immorality, but that's because he placed a high value on the way our bodies are connected to sex. Our bodies are what we use to experience the sexual intimacy that God designed. Sex can affect so many areas of our lives, our futures, our mental health, the quality of our relationships. So God must have designed it intentionally. To be clear, desiring another person in a sexual way is common. Being curious about sex is good and is okay. We are sexual beings, and it is okay to have sexual desires, be curious about sex, and be attracted to other people. That's why, when it comes to sex and technology, the truth is, technology is a poor substitute for real sexual connection. Whether it's watching highly sexual movies, talking with other people online in highly sexualized ways, or seeking sexual experiences over technology. When we shift what's meant to be an in-person physical connection to the internet, it loses its meaning. It can easily become selfish. It can easily change our motive from connection to pleasure. See, porn never paints the full picture or tells the whole story of what we were meant to experience. There's always something missing, meaning that we can have a tendency to make it just about physical pleasure and not about true connection. And why does this even matter? Well, it's because while God created our bodies, God also created us as a body with a soul, with emotions, with a spirit, and sex was designed to include all of those things. And we believe that this is so much more and so much better than what porn offers us. The other thing is this: technology is a poor education tool for sex. So when we turn to technology or porn to explore our sexual desire or curiosity, we're asking it to do something that it wasn't even intended to do. We're looking to satisfy deep desires, curiosities, and questions. But more than this, we're looking to be fully known and safe in the realest way that God designed. But porn isn't capable of doing that. In today's world, when you have a question about your homework or a new artist or a new food trend that you heard about, it is so normal to turn to technology like our phones or computers for the answers. However, in the case of sex, the answer we find when we turn to porn isn't designed to give you an accurate story. Porn is not created to inform or educate. A lot of people start watching porn because they're curious. The problem is porn was never designed to educate us about the whole picture of sex. Porn is a performance. It's staged. It's based on a false version of what real sex and intimacy are actually like. It sets unrealistic expectations, and the truth is, anything that is designed or engineered or manufactured to appear to be that perfect can become addicting. We can find ourselves addicted to a sexual education coming from false information. And the last thing is this: technology makes it easier to treat people worse. Sex and technology can be tricky because being on your phone or iPad or computer can sort of feel like you have a barrier between you and reality. Like you have this kind of like invisible shield. It's the same way that you see TikTok made me buy it. Social media and the internet is made for our consumption. So when we get into the territory of other humans on the other side of technology, it gets infinitely more complicated. That's why you see so many trolls on the comments of a post. It's way easier to treat people like they aren't real people when you aren't face-to-face, when you are talking to a username instead of a human. When you treat people like they aren't people with value, worth, emotions, history, futures, families, that is called objectifying. To objectify means portraying a human as an object meant just for your benefit instead of a person to be known, loved, and cared for. And any of that content that objectifies people for sexual pleasure falls into the category of sexual immorality. Sexual content that causes you to compromise your personal values or that makes sex into just something that you consume falls into the category of sexual immorality. This isn't a knock against sexual desires or technology. This is about what's best for you, your future, and what's honorable for your body. Think of it this way. Technology is good and technology is powerful. When we turn to technology to satisfy our sexual desires, it leads us away from sexual integrity. Porn is powerful enough to take us to a place we're not intended to go. Porn is powerful enough to try to satisfy something that it was never meant to satisfy. Technology is powerful enough to get out of control and highly addictive when we're not intentional with it. So, what does sexual integrity look like in the area of technology? Well, let's start by doing what Paul asks us to do. Flee from. Not walk or avoid or ignore, but actively run away. This means that we proactively take steps that put us in a place to utilize what's great about technology without compromising our sexual integrity. What would it look like for you to run away from sexual immorality? Then let's think about the next step. Run toward. It's not just about running away from something, it's also about what you're running in a different direction toward. When we run from using technology in an unhealthy way, what will we run toward? What part of sexual integrity do you need to intentionally move in the direction of? And whose help do you need in order to do that? You can talk about this in your small group or one-on-one with your small group leader. Here's the thing, technology is good, and technology is powerful. Maybe today it's time for us to consider if there's more power to technology than we may have thought possible. Imagine being a person of sexual integrity in this area. Wouldn't that be a better, more peaceful, and more hopeful way to live? I mean, this is the life that God has for us. You can see God working when you choose sexual integrity and experience God helping you live that out. God loves you and wants nothing but the best for you.